Chaos is not what breaks a person. It is the lack of control within that does. Think about the last time your emotions took over. Maybe it was a message that felt disrespectful, a conversation that escalated too quickly, a moment when pressure built so fast that you reacted before you could think. In those seconds, it feels automatic, almost justified. But later, when everything is quiet again, you replay it in your mind and wonder why you let it control you. That most people are not defeated by circumstances. They are defeated by their reactions to those circumstances. We live in a world that constantly pulls at our emotional system. Notifications interrupt our focus. Deadlines compress our patience. Social media amplifies comparison. One careless comment can linger in your head for hours. Without training, your mind becomes reactive. You start living in defense mode, defending your ego, your image, your emotions. But emotional strength is not about shutting down. It is not about pretending nothing hurts. It is not about becoming cold or distant. True emotional mastery means you can feel anger without exploding. You can feel fear without freezing. You can feel disappointment without collapsing. You remain steady even when everything around you feels unstable. There was a time in my own life when I thought being strong meant speaking louder, reacting faster, proving my point. During an important discussion at work, a single critical remark shifted my entire state. My heartbeat rose, my focus narrowed, and instead of responding with clarity, I responded with pride. The conversation changed direction. The opportunity quietly slipped away. Not because I lacked skill, not because I lacked preparation, but because I lacked control over my emotional response. That moment forced me to confront something uncomfortable. Intelligence is not enough. Talent is not enough. Hard work is not enough. If you cannot regulate your emotions, you will sabotage your own potential. And I've seen this pattern not only in myself, but in friends, colleagues, even family members. A close friend once nearly destroyed a relationship because every disagreement felt like a personal attack. It wasn't the conflict that damaged the bond. It was the uncontrolled reaction. When he learned to pause, to observe his emotional trigger before responding, everything changed. The same conversations that once created distance began to create understanding. This is what this audiobook is about. Over the next hour, you will learn how to recognize your emotional triggers, build space between feeling and reaction, rewrite the internal stories that intensify pain, stay calm under pressure, protect your energy from negativity, transform setbacks into strength, and develop emotional discipline in your relationships. Step by step, you will train yourself to become the calm presence in chaotic environments. You cannot control what people say. You cannot control unexpected setbacks. You cannot control the storms that enter your life, but you can control who you become inside them. If this message resonates with you, stay with me until the end. And if you know someone in your life who is struggling, someone overwhelmed by pressure, conflict, or emotional instability, share this video with them. It might be the reminder they need to take back control and start improving their life from the inside out. Chapter 1. Understanding the emotional trigger. Before you can master your emotions, you must understand what activates them. Most emotional reactions do not begin in the present moment. They begin in memory, in interpretation, in meaning. What looks like a simple situation on the outside is often a deeply wired trigger on the inside. Imagine two people receiving the same feedback from their manager. This needs improvement. One person nods calmly and asks for clarification. The other feels attacked, embarrassed, even angry. The words were identical. The difference was internal. An emotional trigger is not the event itself. It is the meaning your mind attaches to the event. Several years ago, a colleague of mine named Marcus struggled with this in a way that almost cost him his career. Marcus was talented, disciplined, and highly competent, but he had one pattern. Whenever someone questioned his work, even slightly, his tone shifted. He became defensive, till his posture stiffened. His responses grew sharp. At first, people assumed he was simply passionate. Over time, they began to see him as difficult. One afternoon after a tense meeting, I asked him a simple question. "What does it mean to you when someone critiques your work?" He paused longer than usual. Then he said something revealing. "It means they think I'm not good enough." That was the trigger. The criticism was not the problem. The hidden belief was. Many of our strongest emotional reactions are rooted in unexamined beliefs. If they disagree with me, they don't respect me. If I make a mistake, I lose value. If someone is distant, I'm being rejected. If I am not in control, I am unsafe. When these beliefs operate unconsciously, they hijack your nervous system before logic has a chance to speak. Understanding your emotional triggers requires observation without judgment. This is where most people fail. And instead of observing their reaction, they justify it, they defend it, they label it as personality. But awareness is not self-criticism, it is self-clarity. There is a small but powerful exercise I once shared with a friend who often lost patience with his family. His trigger was feeling ignored. When conversations overlapped at the dinner table, he felt invisible. And when he felt invisible, he became louder. When he became louder, the room grew tense. And I asked him to try something simple for 1 week. Every time he felt irritation rise, he would silently complete this sentence in his mind. "I'm feeling aquas because I believe as." The first evening, he caught himself mid-reaction. "I'm feeling angry because I believe they don't care about what I'm saying." That awareness alone softened his tone. The belief was exposed, and once exposed, it lost some of its control. Some emotional triggers often fall into predictable categories: the need for validation, the fear of rejection, the desire for control, the sensitivity to disrespect, the intolerance of uncertainty. When any of these are activated, your body responds before your mind fully understands what is happening. Your heart rate shifts, your breathing changes. Muscles tighten. This is not weakness, it is biology. But biology is not destiny. One of the most effective ways to weaken a trigger is to map it. And for the next few days, begin noticing moments when your emotional state shifts abruptly. Do not try to change the reaction yet. Simply study it. Ask yourself, what exactly happened? What did I feel in my body? What thought appeared instantly? What did I believe about that moment? You may discover patterns you never noticed before. A woman I once coached believed she had anger issues. But when we traced her triggers, a pattern emerged. She reacted most strongly when plans changed unexpectedly. Underneath the anger was anxiety. Underneath the anxiety was a belief: if things are not predictable, I am not safe. Once she understood that her reaction was rooted in fear, not aggression, she approached it differently. Instead of fighting the emotion, she addressed the belief. She practiced flexibility in small situations, choosing a different restaurant, so taking a new route home, gradually training her nervous system to tolerate uncertainty. The intensity of her anger decreased, not because she suppressed it, but because she understood it. Here is the truth: what you do not examine will control you. When you label yourself as short-tempered, too sensitive, or overly emotional, you create identity out of reaction. But reactions are patterns, and patterns can be rewired. There is an important distinction between feeling and acting. You cannot always prevent the initial surge of emotion, but you can prevent it from becoming behavior. The moment you recognize a trigger, you create distance between stimulus and response. In that distance, power begins. Emotional mastery does not start with control. It starts with curiosity. Instead of saying, "Why am I like this?" ask, "What is this trying to protect?" Most triggers are protective mechanisms formed earlier in life. They were once useful. They helped you avoid embarrassment, rejection, or loss. But over time, they became automatic, firing in situations that no longer required defense. When Marcus recognized that criticism triggered his fear of inadequacy, he didn't become emotionless, so he became reflective. The next time feedback came, he noticed the familiar tightening in his chest. But instead of defending himself, he asked one question: "Can you show me specifically where I can improve?" That single shift changed how people perceived him. More importantly, it changed how he perceived himself. Awareness did not remove emotion, it redirected it. As you move forward, remember this: your triggers are not enemies, they are signals. Signals pointing toward beliefs that need examination. Signals revealing where you feel vulnerable. Signals inviting you to grow. If you want to stay calm in chaos, you must first understand what chaos inside you looks like. Observe it, name it, study it, and in doing so, you begin to reclaim control. Chapter 2: The Discipline of the Pause. There is a space between what happens to you and what you do next. Most people never notice it. That space may last only a second, sometimes less. But within that second lies the difference between regret and respect, between escalation and resolution, between chaos and control. The ability to pause is not natural. It is trained. Several years ago, a friend of mine nearly ended a long friendship over a misunderstanding that lasted no more than 30 seconds. He received a short, blunt message from someone he trusted. No greeting, no context, just a direct statement that felt cold. His mind filled in the blanks immediately. "He's upset with me. I must have done something wrong. This is disrespectful." Within minutes, he typed a long, defensive reply. Before pressing send, something unusual happened. His phone battery died. Annoyed, he tossed the phone aside and left to run an errand. By the time he returned home and charged it, the emotional intensity had dropped. He reread the message. It looked different, less hostile, less personal. He deleted the entire reply and instead wrote, "Hey, just checking. Did you mean this urgently? Want to make sure I understand." The response came back quickly. "Oh no, sorry if it sounded harsh. I was rushing between meetings." 30 seconds of emotional reaction almost cost him 10 years of trust. The difference was not maturity. It was interruption, an accidental pause. The pause is powerful because emotions are fast, but clarity is slower. When you react instantly, you are responding from impulse. When you pause, you allow your rational mind to re-enter the room. In high-pressure environments, this skill becomes even more critical. A former manager I worked with had an unusual habit. Now, whenever a meeting became tense and voices began to overlap, he would lean back in his chair and take a sip of water before speaking. It seemed small, almost insignificant, but that tiny ritual created a visible reset. The room would slow down. People would recalibrate. One day I asked him why he always did that. He smiled and said, "If I speak at the speed of emotion, I lose authority. If I speak at the speed of thought, I lead." That is the discipline of the pause. Pausing is not weakness. It is containment. When you pause, you send a message, both to others and to yourself, that you are not controlled by urgency. You are not pressured into reaction. You choose your timing. There are practical ways to build this skill. First, slow your physiology. The body and the mind are connected. When your breathing is shallow and rapid, your thoughts mirror that state. A deliberate inhale through the nose for 4 seconds, a brief hold, See, and a controlled exhale for 6 seconds can stabilize your nervous system within moments. You're not calming the situation. You are calming your system. Second, introduce a question before a response. Questions create space. Instead of defending immediately, ask, "Can you clarify what you mean?" Or, "Help me understand your concern." Questions shift the interaction from confrontation to exploration. Third, delay digital reactions. Messages and emails create artificial urgency, so you feel compelled to reply instantly. But urgency is rarely real. Give yourself structured delay, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, sometimes a full day. Most emotional messages lose intensity with time, and what loses intensity loses control. A colleague once adopted a simple rule: never respond to criticism after 9 p.m. He noticed that late-night replies were often sharper, more reactive, and less thoughtful. By postponing responses until morning, he preserved both professionalism and peace. Name the pause also protects relationships. In close relationships, emotional speed is often highest. You know each other's sensitivities. You know which words land hardest. This makes the pause even more valuable. A woman I know transformed her marriage with one adjustment. Whenever an argument began escalating, she would say calmly, "I need 5 minutes." Not to withdraw, not to punish, but to regulate. She would step outside, breathe, and return with steadiness. The arguments did not disappear, but they stopped becoming destructive. Without the pause, emotion escalates. With the pause, emotion stabilizes. There is an important distinction here. Pausing is not suppressing. Suppression pushes emotion inward, where it builds pressure. Pausing allows emotion to settle before expression. It creates timing without denial. If you observe highly composed individuals, surgeons, pilots, elite negotiators, you will notice something consistent. They do not rush their responses. Even in urgency, saying their movements appear measured. This is not because they feel less. It is because they have trained themselves to insert space before action. The world often rewards speed. Quick replies, instant reactions, immediate opinions, but emotional mastery rewards restraint. Every time you successfully pause, you strengthen a new neural pathway. You teach your mind that reaction is optional. You expand that small space between stimulus and response. And over time, that space becomes your advantage. You cannot prevent every emotional surge, but you can decide whether it becomes speech, behavior, or silence. In moments of tension, remember this: the first impulse is rarely your best one. Let it pass. Wait, then choose. In that choice, you begin to separate yourself from chaos. Chapter 3. Rewriting the inner narrative. Long before you speak out loud, you are speaking internally. There is a voice inside you that interprets everything. It explains why something happened. It predicts what will happen next. It assigns blame, meaning, intention. Most of the time, you don't even notice it. But that inner narrative shapes your emotional reality more than any external event ever could. And two people can walk into the same room and leave with entirely different emotional experiences. One thinks, "No one talked to me. I don't belong here." The other thinks, "Everyone seemed busy. I'll connect next time." The environment was identical. The story was not. Your emotions do not respond to facts. They respond to interpretation. Several years ago, I worked with someone named Elena who struggled deeply with self-doubt. On paper, she was highly competent, organized, thoughtful, and respected by her peers. Yet every time she received neutral feedback, her internal dialogue turned harsh. If a manager said, "This section could be clearer," her mind translated it into, "You're not capable." If a colleague didn't immediately reply to her message, she assumed, "I'm being ignored." Over time, her stress levels rose. She began overworking to compensate for imagined deficiencies. She wasn't reacting to reality. She was reacting to her internal translation of reality. But one afternoon, during a particularly overwhelming week, she said something revealing. "It feels like the world is constantly judging me." I asked her to describe the world. After a pause, she laughed quietly. "It's mostly just my own voice." That moment was pivotal. Many of us carry an internal narrator that is overly critical, overly dramatic, or overly fearful. And because it has been speaking for years, we mistake it for truth. But thoughts are not facts. They are interpretations. Rewriting your inner narrative begins with catching exaggeration. The mind tends to use extreme language when emotionally activated. Always, never, everyone, no one, ruined, disaster. These words intensify emotional states. I always mess things up. No one respects me. This is a disaster. When you slow down and examine these statements, they often collapse under scrutiny. Always? Every single time? No one? Not one person? The exaggeration fuels the emotion. A former client of mine once believed she was terrible at public speaking. This belief followed her for years. Whenever she had to present, her anxiety spiked before she even began. But when we examined the evidence, we found something interesting. She had delivered multiple presentations successfully. The terrible label came from one awkward experience early in her career. One moment had become a permanent identity. We reframed the narrative, and instead of "I'm terrible at public speaking," she adopted "I'm developing confidence with practice." The difference may seem subtle, but emotionally it was profound. One statement created shame, the other created growth. The goal is not blind positivity, it is accurate thinking. Accuracy reduces emotional distortion. There is a powerful exercise you can use whenever you feel overwhelmed by a strong emotion. Write down the situation, then write the first interpretation that comes to mind. After that, write at least 2 alternative explanations. For example, situation: a friend cancels dinner plans last minute. First interpretation: they don't value my time. Alternative explanation: they may be overwhelmed. Alternative explanation: something unexpected happened. By forcing your mind to generate multiple perspectives, you weaken the dominance of the first emotional reaction. Your brain prefers efficiency. It clings to familiar explanations because they require less energy. But growth requires deliberate reevaluation. Another important shift involves separating identity from performance. If you fail at something, that does not make you a failure. If someone disagrees with you, that does not make you inadequate. If you experience rejection, that does not reduce your worth. When identity fuses with outcomes, emotions become extreme. Every setback feels personal. Every critique feels threatening. And a friend of mine who runs a small business once faced a wave of negative customer feedback after a product launch. His initial narrative was brutal. "I'm not cut out for this. I embarrassed myself." He considered shutting everything down. Instead, he forced himself to rewrite the story. "This product missed the mark. That doesn't mean I did." That distinction allowed him to analyze the feedback objectively. He adjusted, improved, and relaunched successfully months later. And the event did not change. The story did. You must also examine inherited narratives, beliefs absorbed from family, culture, or past experiences. Maybe you grew up hearing, "You have to be perfect," or "Showing emotion is weakness," or "If you don't defend yourself immediately, people will walk over you." These narratives become automatic lenses. You interpret present events through past conditioning. Emotional mastery requires questioning those lenses. Ask yourself, is this interpretation helping me or harming me? Is it based on evidence or assumption? Would I speak to someone I care about the way I'm speaking to myself right now? Often, the inner voice is harsher than any external critic. Imagine replacing that voice with one that is firm but fair, honest but constructive, calm but realistic. Instead of, "You ruined everything," try, "That didn't go as planned. What can you adjust next time?" Instead of, "They're against you," try, "You may not have the full picture yet." This is not self-deception, it is cognitive discipline. When you consistently choose balanced interpretations, your emotional responses stabilize. You feel less threatened, less reactive, less defensive. Over time, your inner narrative becomes an ally rather than an adversary. The chaos outside loses intensity because the chaos inside has been rewritten. You cannot always control what happens, but you can control the story you tell yourself about what happens. And that story will determine whether you feel attacked or challenged, rejected or redirected, defeated or developing. Change the narrative, and you change the emotional outcome. Chapter 4. Training. Calm under pressure. So, calm is not something you wait for. It is something you build. Many people believe they will stay calm when the moment demands it, but pressure does not reveal who you want to be. It reveals who you have trained to be. If you have never practiced steadiness, chaos will expose that immediately. Think about a pilot flying through turbulence. The passengers may panic, the cabin may shake, but the pilot's voice remains level over the intercom. Not because turbulence feels pleasant, not because there is no risk, but because composure has been rehearsed long before the storm appeared. Emotional stability under pressure works the same way. A former colleague of mine, David, used to freeze during high-stakes presentations. In small meetings, he was articulate and confident. But when executives entered the room, his hands would tremble slightly. His throat tightened. His thoughts scattered. After one particularly uncomfortable presentation, he admitted, "I don't understand. I know the material. But when the pressure rises, I lose control." The problem was not knowledge. It was conditioning. Pressure amplifies whatever pattern is strongest. If your dominant pattern is anxiety, anxiety intensifies. If your dominant pattern is focus, focus strengthens. David decided to train his nervous system deliberately. Instead of avoiding pressure, he simulated it. And he began practicing presentations in environments that made him slightly uncomfortable. He invited colleagues to interrupt him with difficult questions. He rehearsed while standing instead of sitting. He recorded himself and watched the playback even though it felt awkward. At first, his body reacted the same way. Shallow breathing, accelerated speech, tense posture. But repetition created familiarity. Familiarity reduced threat perception. The brain interprets unfamiliar intensity as danger. When you repeatedly expose yourself to manageable stress, the intensity becomes normal. This is called stress inoculation. Athletes use it. Military units use it. Surgeons use it. They rehearse under controlled difficulty so that real pressure feels survivable. You can apply the same principle. If you struggle with conflict, practice difficult conversations in low-stakes situations. If you fear public speaking, start with small groups and gradually increase exposure. If deadlines overwhelm you, simulate shorter timelines during personal projects to strengthen focus under constraint. Calm is built through graduated exposure, not avoidance. There is also a physical dimension to composure that many overlook. Your posture influences your emotional state. When pressure hits, most people contract, shoulders rise, jaw tightens, breathing shortens. This physical contraction signals vulnerability to the brain, reinforcing stress. Try the opposite. Lengthen your spine. Lower your shoulders deliberately. Slow your movements slightly. Speak 10% slower than your impulse suggests. This subtle shift communicates safety to your nervous system. I once observed a senior attorney during a tense negotiation. The opposing side was aggressive, pressing hard with rapid arguments. Instead of matching their speed, she slowed hers. She adjusted her glasses calmly, reviewed her notes, and responded in measured sentences. Her stillness unsettled the other side more than any raised voice could have. Pressure often tries to dictate your tempo. Mastery means you control your own. Another powerful training method involves mental rehearsal. Before entering a high-pressure situation, close your eyes and visualize it in detail. Imagine the room, the faces, the tone of the conversation, then imagine remaining steady. Hear your voice clear and composed. See yourself breathing evenly. At first, the brain does not fully distinguish between vividly imagined scenarios and real ones. Mental rehearsal strengthens neural pathways associated with calm performance. A friend of mine who struggled with job interviews used this method consistently. Instead of imagining worst-case scenarios, he practiced visualizing confident responses. When interview day arrived, it felt familiar rather than threatening. The difference in his demeanor was noticeable. But training calm also requires accepting discomfort. You cannot demand that pressure feel comfortable. It will not. The goal is not comfort. The goal is functionality. A firefighter does not wait for fear to disappear before entering a burning building. He acknowledges the fear and moves with training anyway. Likewise, when you feel nervous before a critical moment, do not interpret that sensation as failure. Interpret it as activation, energy, readiness. The meaning you assign to physical sensations determines their impact. There is a story about a concert pianist who was asked if she still felt nervous before performing. She smiled and said, "Of course, but I've learned to call it excitement." That reframing changed her experience of the same physiological response. Pressure will always exist. Deadlines will remain. Conversations will intensify. Expectations will rise. The question is not whether you will encounter stress. The question is whether you have trained for it. And each time you deliberately place yourself in slightly uncomfortable situations and respond with intention, you expand your tolerance. What once overwhelmed you becomes manageable. What once intimidated you becomes routine. Calm under pressure is not a personality trait. It is repetition layered over time. When the storm arrives, you will not magically transform into someone composed. You will default to your training. So train deliberately. Stand taller when you want to shrink, and slow down when you want to rush. Breathe deeper when you want to tense. Expose yourself gradually to what intimidates you. In doing so, you prepare yourself for moments that matter. And when others begin to panic, your steadiness will not be accidental. It will be earned. Chapter 5. Guarding your energy in a world of emotional noise. Not every emotion you feel originates from you. Some of it is absorbed. You walk into a room where tension lingers from a disagreement that happened before you arrived. No one explains it, but you sense it. Your posture shifts. Your mood lowers. By the end of the day, you feel drained without fully understanding why. This is emotional contagion. Human beings are wired to mirror each other. We unconsciously match tone, in facial expression, breathing patterns. This ability helps us connect. But without awareness, it also makes us vulnerable to emotional noise. There is a difference between empathy and absorption. Empathy allows you to understand someone's emotional state. Absorption makes you carry it. A friend of mine, Lila, worked in a high-pressure hospital environment. She was compassionate and deeply caring, qualities that made her excellent at her job. But over time, she noticed something troubling. After long shifts, she felt emotionally heavy. Not just tired, but burdened. She replayed patients' anxieties in her mind. She carried co-workers' frustrations home with her. Her empathy had turned into emotional overextension. One evening, after a particularly intense day, she said, "I feel like I'm leaking energy everywhere." The problem was not caring, it was boundary absence. Emotional mastery requires recognizing that you can be supportive without being consumed. And imagine standing near a fire. If you stand too close, you burn. If you stand too far, you provide no warmth. The key is distance. Close enough to care, far enough to remain intact. Many people struggle with this in relationships. When a partner is upset, they immediately internalize it. What did I do? When a colleague is stressed, they mirror the stress automatically. When a family member is negative, they join the negativity. Over time, this pattern creates exhaustion. The one subtle but powerful shift is learning to separate responsibility from influence. You can influence a situation without being responsible for someone else's emotions. A colleague once told me about his teenage son who would often come home frustrated and irritable. At first, he reacted defensively, escalating minor tensions. Then he tried the opposite, absorbing the mood and becoming equally discouraged. Neither approach worked. Eventually, he experimented with steadiness, and when his son entered the house upset, he responded calmly but did not mirror the agitation. He listened, he acknowledged, but he did not match the intensity. Within minutes, the emotional temperature decreased. He later told me, "I realized I don't have to ride every wave. I can stay on the shore." That distinction changes everything. Guarding your energy does not mean becoming distant or detached from humanity. It means being selective about what you internalize. There is a mental habit that helps with this: labeling ownership. When you notice an emotional shift in yourself, pause and ask, "Is this mine?" If you are calm before entering a conversation and suddenly feel irritated or anxious, consider the possibility that you are mirroring someone else's state. This question alone can prevent unnecessary emotional spirals. Another useful tool is intentional decompression. High-intensity environments require structured release. Without it, the accumulated emotional residue lingers. A former mentor of mine had a ritual at the end of each workday. Before entering his home, he sat in his car for 3 minutes in silence. No phone, no music, just stillness. He used that time to mentally separate work from personal life. He once explained, "If I don't close the door intentionally, the office walks into my living room." Simple rituals create psychological boundaries. Physical boundaries matter too. Constant exposure to news cycles, there's social media outrage, and online arguments creates a background hum of agitation. Even if you are not directly involved, your nervous system absorbs the tension. Limiting exposure is not ignorance, it is strategic conservation. Ask yourself honestly, how much emotional noise are you consuming daily? The modern world monetizes attention, and emotional intensity captures attention quickly. Outrage spreads faster than calm. Drama spreads faster than nuance. Say it: if you feed your mind constant volatility, your baseline emotional state will shift upward toward tension. Guarding your energy means curating your inputs. There is also power in silence. Not every comment requires a reply. Not every provocation deserves engagement. Not every debate is worth your peace. A senior executive I once observed had a remarkable habit during contentious meetings. When a participant tried to provoke him with subtle insults, he would simply nod and move on. No defensive clarification, no counterattack, just composure. Afterward, someone asked him why he didn't respond. He answered, "I don't compete for chaos." That sentence stayed with me. When you engage every emotional stimulus, you surrender control of your internal state to external randomness. Selective engagement preserves clarity. It also signals strength. People sense when you are not easily destabilized. They may test it at first, but over time, consistent steadiness changes how others approach you. You become a grounding presence rather than a reactive participant. Guarding your energy also involves protecting your internal dialogue when surrounded by negativity. In workplaces or families where criticism dominates, it is easy to internalize that tone. If everyone complains, you begin to see problems everywhere. If everyone doubts, your confidence erodes subtly. Be mindful of conversational environments. Ask, does this space elevate my thinking or shrink it? And you may not always have the power to change your environment immediately, but you can limit how deeply it penetrates your identity. Visualization can assist here. Before entering emotionally charged environments, imagine yourself surrounded by a transparent boundary, not a wall, but a filter. Words can pass through, but only constructive information remains. The rest dissipates. It may sound simple, but the brain responds to symbolic imagery. Lila, the nurse who felt emotionally drained, had eventually adopted several practices. She limited how often she replayed conversations mentally. She developed a brief breathing ritual between patient visits, and most importantly, she reminded herself daily, compassion does not require self-sacrifice. Within months, her exhaustion decreased. She was still empathetic, but she was no longer absorbing every emotional weight she encountered. The world will always produce noise. Some days it will be loud, some days subtle. And your task is not to eliminate it. That is impossible. Your task is to remain sovereign within it. Care deeply, listen attentively, support wisely. But remember, you are not required to carry what does not belong to you. Protect your energy with intention, because when your inner state remains steady, you do not just survive chaos, you stand above it. Chapter 6. Turning Pain into Power. Pain is unavoidable. Disappointment will visit you. Rejection will find you. Failure will interrupt you. No one builds a meaningful life without encountering resistance, but pain itself is not the enemy. Unprocessed pain is. When discomfort is ignored, it turns into bitterness. When it is denied, it turns into resentment. When it is personalized, it turns into shame. But when it is examined, it becomes instruction. Or there is a quiet strength in people who have suffered and grown wiser instead of harder. I once knew a man named Aaron who applied for a leadership role he had worked toward for nearly 5 years. He sacrificed weekends, volunteered for extra responsibility, and trained relentlessly. When the promotion was announced, someone else's name was called. He smiled publicly, congratulated the winner, but privately, he was devastated. For weeks, he replayed the decision in his mind. Sir, they overlooked me. They don't value my effort. Maybe I'm not as capable as I thought. He had 2 options. Option 1, withdraw emotionally, reduce effort, and let disappointment define him. Option 2, treat the pain as data. After sitting with the discomfort long enough to feel it honestly, he scheduled a meeting with his supervisor. Instead of asking, "Why didn't I get it?" he asked, "What skills do I need to develop to be undeniable next time?" The feedback was direct but fair. He lacked experience managing conflict at scale. He had technical competence, but not enough cross-team visibility. The rejection was not a verdict. It was information. Over the next year, he volunteered to lead difficult projects. He initiated collaboration across departments. He intentionally stepped into uncomfortable territory. When another opportunity arose, he was not just prepared, he was transformed. The pain had shaped him rather than shrunk him. Most people want relief from discomfort immediately. They distract themselves, blame others, or search for validation. But growth requires tolerating discomfort long enough to extract meaning from it. Pain carries a question inside it. What is this teaching me? Sometimes the lesson is skill-based. Sometimes it is about boundaries. Sometimes it reveals misplaced expectations. A close friend once ended a long-term relationship that she believed would lead to marriage. When it collapsed, so she felt betrayed and confused. Her initial reaction was self-criticism. I wasted years. I should have seen the signs. Instead of rushing into another relationship to numb the emptiness, she paused her romantic life entirely. She journaled daily. She asked herself uncomfortable questions. Why did I ignore red flags? Why did I compromise my values? What patterns did I repeat? Over time, she realized something profound. She had been afraid of being alone, so she tolerated incompatibility. And the breakup was painful, but it revealed a deeper insecurity that needed attention. 2 years later, she entered a healthier relationship. Not because luck changed, but because she changed. Pain had illuminated a blind spot. This is the difference between reactive suffering and intentional growth. Reactive suffering asks, why is this happening to me? Intentional growth asks, how can this shape me? The shift is subtle but powerful. There is also strength in recognizing that emotional pain builds resilience when processed properly. Consider physical training. Muscles grow through controlled stress and recovery. Without resistance, there is no development, but uncontrolled strain leads to injury. The same principle applies emotionally. If you avoid all discomfort, your emotional tolerance remains fragile. If you overwhelm yourself without reflection, you burn out. The key is deliberate processing. After any significant setback, give yourself structured reflection time. Ask, what part of this was within my control? What part was not? What skill or quality can I strengthen because of this? What belief about myself is being challenged? Writing these answers down forces clarity. A business owner I worked with faced a public product failure that attracted harsh criticism online. His instinct was to fight back, to argue with commenters and defend every decision. Instead, he stepped away for 48 hours. He gathered feedback objectively. He distinguished between emotional noise and actionable insight. What he discovered was uncomfortable but valuable. The criticism about product usability was accurate. The attacks on his character were not. By separating signal from noise, he improved the product without internalizing personal attacks. Pain becomes power when you extract lessons without absorbing identity damage. And there is another layer to this: gratitude for adversity. Not gratitude in a superficial sense, but recognition that challenges often accelerate growth more than comfort ever could. Think about a time when you were stretched beyond your limits. At the time, it likely felt unfair, yet looking back, you may see how that period expanded your capability. Comfort maintains. Pressure refines. This does not mean you should seek suffering recklessly, but when it arrives, and it will, meet it with curiosity rather than collapse. Your future strength is often hidden inside your present frustration. Aaron once told me something after finally stepping into his leadership role. If I had gotten the job the first time, I wouldn't have been ready for it. Rejection forced preparation, disappointment forced expansion, loss forced introspection, pain when faced directly becomes fuel. But there is a warning here. Do not romanticize suffering. Not every painful event contains a dramatic life lesson. Some experiences simply hurt. Allow yourself to feel that honestly. Emotional mastery does not require pretending that loss feels good. It requires refusing to let loss define your identity. You are not your worst day. You are not your last mistake. You are not the rejection letter, the failed attempt, or the criticism. You are the person who decides what to do next. When something breaks in your life, a plan, a relationship, a goal, you stand at a crossroads. You can shrink or you can expand. Turning pain into power is not about toughness. It is about transformation. Feel the disappointment fully. Extract the lesson carefully. Apply the adjustment intentionally. and then move forward stronger than before. Because every setback carries potential energy. The question is whether you will let it weigh you down or propel you upward. Chapter 7. Emotional discipline in relationships. It is easy to appear emotionally strong when you're alone. The real test begins when other people are involved. Relationships expose your sensitivities. They reveal impatience you didn't know you had. They uncover expectations you never articulated. In isolation, you may feel calm and centered. In connection, especially close connection, your emotional patterns surface quickly. Emotional discipline in relationships is not about control over others. It is about control over your own reactions when closeness intensifies vulnerability. The closer someone is to you, the more power they have to trigger you. A small comment from a stranger rarely lingers. The same comment from a partner, sibling, or close friend can echo for hours. Why? Because attachment amplifies meaning. I once observed this dynamic in a couple I knew well. Say they had been together for years and genuinely cared about each other. Yet their arguments followed a predictable pattern. One would raise a concern, the other would interpret it as criticism. Tone would shift, voices would rise. The original issue, often minor, would disappear beneath defensive reactions. After one particularly heated disagreement, they sat down and dissected what had happened. And the initial complaint had been simple. I feel like you've been distracted lately. But what was heard internally was very different. You're failing me. The emotional escalation wasn't caused by the words spoken, it was driven by the meaning assigned. Emotional discipline in relationships begins with accurate listening, not listening to defend, not listening to respond, but listening to understand. There is a powerful practice that transformed the way they communicated. And whenever tension began to rise, one person would repeat back what they heard before replying. For example, "So what you're saying is that you felt less connected this week, is that right?" This slowed the interaction dramatically. It reduced misinterpretation. It signaled care instead of combat. Most relational conflict is not about major betrayals. It is about minor misunderstandings compounded by emotional speed. Another critical skill is regulating tone. Words carry meaning, but tone carries emotion. A neutral sentence delivered sharply becomes hostile. The same sentence delivered calmly becomes constructive. A colleague once told me that during a difficult period in his marriage, he realized something uncomfortable. His content was reasonable, but his tone was abrasive. He recorded a conversation during an argument, with permission, and later listened to it alone. Hearing his own sharpness shocked him. He said, "I sounded like I was cross-examining, not connecting." From that point forward, he practiced lowering his volume intentionally during disagreements. It felt unnatural at first, but over time, his calmer tone de-escalated conflicts before they intensified. Emotional discipline also requires managing assumptions. In relationships, we often assume intent without verification. If someone forgets something important, we assume they don't care. If they need space, we assume rejection. If they disagree, we assume disrespect. An assumption fuels insecurity. Clarification reduces it. There is strength in asking direct but calm questions. "When you said that, what did you mean?" Or, "Help me understand what you're feeling." Clarity prevents unnecessary emotional narratives from taking over. Boundaries are another essential component. Emotional discipline does not mean tolerating harmful behavior indefinitely. It means responding with steadiness rather than explosion. And a friend once worked with a colleague who consistently spoke dismissively in meetings. Instead of confronting him aggressively or silently resenting him, she chose a measured approach. After a meeting, she privately said, "When my ideas are interrupted, it makes collaboration difficult. I'd appreciate finishing my thoughts." Her tone was calm, Her message was clear. No sarcasm, no accusation. The behavior improved. Sometimes discipline is expressed not through restraint, but through composed assertion. There is also value in timing. Attempting to resolve emotionally charged issues when either person is exhausted or overwhelmed rarely ends well. Emotional discipline includes recognizing when to pause discussions and return to them later. A simple phrase like, "I want to talk about this when we're both clear-headed," can prevent damage. Relationships thrive on safety. Safety is built when people feel heard, respected, and not attacked for vulnerability. And if someone expresses fear or insecurity and you respond with dismissal or ridicule, trust weakens. If you respond with steadiness, trust strengthens. This does not require perfection. It requires awareness. Another subtle but powerful habit involves appreciation. In emotionally charged environments, the mind often scans for problems. This creates imbalance. Make it a discipline to articulate appreciation regularly. Not dramatically, but consistently. "I appreciate how you handled that. Thank you for being patient earlier. I noticed the effort you made." These acknowledgments create emotional deposits that buffer inevitable disagreements. There is a story about a seasoned mediator who resolved conflicts for decades, and when asked what the most important factor in preserving relationships was, he answered, "Respect under tension." Anyone can be kind when everything is easy. Respect during disagreement is rare. It signals maturity. Emotional discipline in relationships also means recognizing when silence is wiser than escalation. Not every flawed comment requires correction. Not every small irritation requires confrontation. Discernment matters. Ask yourself, is this about ego or is this about health? And if it is ego, let it go. If it is health, address it calmly. The strongest relationships are not those without conflict. They are those where conflict does not erode dignity. You will disappoint people at times. They will disappoint you. Miscommunication will occur. Stress will intrude. But when emotional discipline becomes a shared standard, relationships deepen instead of fracture. You begin to see disagreement as dialogue, not danger. Connection does not require constant agreement. It requires emotional regulation. When you master your reactions within relationships, you create an environment where honesty is safe and growth is mutual. And in a chaotic world, that kind of stability is rare and powerful. Chapter 8. Becoming the calm in the storm. There is a moment in every crisis when people look around the room searching for stability, not for the loudest voice, not for the most dramatic reaction, but for the steadiest presence. In chaotic environments, the person who remains composed becomes an anchor. Becoming that anchor is not about dominance. It is about inner alignment. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions are integrated, you radiate steadiness without forcing it. And I once witnessed this during a sudden systems failure at a company I worked with. Deadlines were tight. Clients were waiting. Screens were flashing error messages. Within minutes, anxiety spread through the office like electricity. People began talking over each other. Some blamed the IT team. Others panicked about reputational damage. In the middle of that noise, one director stood up and said calmly, "Let's slow down. What do we know for certain?" His tone was level. His breathing unhurried. There was no visible agitation. That single sentence shifted the atmosphere. The problem had not changed, but the emotional climate had. He proceeded to assign clear tasks, speak in measured phrases, and acknowledge concerns without amplifying them. The crisis resolved hours later. What remained long after was not the memory of the error. It was the memory of his composure. Leadership in any context begins with emotional regulation. You do not need a title to embody this, but you can be the calm presence in your family, your workplace, your circle of friends. But to become the calm in the storm, you must develop internal consistency. Consistency means your behavior does not swing wildly based on external conditions. It means your mood is not easily dictated by unpredictability. It means your values guide you more than circumstances do. One way to cultivate this is through daily stillness, not as an abstract concept, but as a disciplined practice. Even 10 minutes of intentional silence each day strengthens your awareness. Sit without stimulation. No phone, no conversation, no distraction. Simply observe your thoughts without engaging them. At first, restlessness appears, then scattered thinking. Gradually, clarity surfaces. Stillness builds familiarity with your internal world. When chaos arrives externally, it feels less overwhelming because you are already accustomed to observing internal movement without reacting to it. Another essential element is emotional auditing. At the end of each week, reflect briefly. When did I remain steady under pressure? When did I lose composure? What patterns are improving? What still requires attention? Growth accelerates when reflection is structured. There is a story about a seasoned sea captain who was once asked how he remained calm during violent storms. He replied, "I respect the sea, but I never fear it." Respect means preparation. Fear means surrender. And he studied weather patterns, maintained his vessel meticulously, trained his crew relentlessly. When storms came, he was not surprised by turbulence. He expected it. Life functions similarly. Chaos is not an exception, it is a recurring feature. If you expect perfect stability, every disruption feels catastrophic. If you expect periodic turbulence, you respond with readiness. Becoming calm in the storm also involves identity. When you see yourself as someone who handles pressure well, your behavior begins to align with that standard. Identity shapes action. Start small. In minor inconveniences, long lines, traffic delays, scheduling errors, practice composure intentionally. These moments are low-risk training grounds. If you cannot remain steady in minor frustrations, major crises will overwhelm you. I once met a physician known for her extraordinary composure in emergency rooms. She told me that early in her career, she deliberately practiced calm during small daily irritations. If equipment was misplaced or paperwork delayed, she used those moments as rehearsal. She said, "If I can't regulate myself over paperwork, I won't regulate myself over a trauma case." Calm is cumulative. Another overlooked dimension is energy management. Physical depletion amplifies emotional instability. Lack of sleep, poor nutrition, and constant overstimulation weaken regulation. Becoming a steady presence requires honoring your biological foundation. You cannot pour stability into others if your own system is exhausted. Finally, humility anchors calmness. The most grounded individuals do not pretend to control everything. They acknowledge uncertainty without panic. They admit when they do not know. They remain open to correction without defensiveness. This quiet humility prevents ego from inflaming already tense situations. Over time, something subtle shifts. People begin to trust your reactions. They know you will not explode unexpectedly. They know your words are considered. They know your presence stabilizes rather than destabilizes. That trust is powerful. It changes how opportunities find you. It changes how conversations unfold. It changes how conflict resolves. You become less reactive, more deliberate, less scattered, more centered, less absorbed by chaos, more anchored within it. There will still be difficult days. Unexpected news, sharp criticism, emotional tension. Becoming the calm in the storm does not eliminate turbulence. It transforms your role within it. Instead of being swept away, you stand grounded. Instead of amplifying noise, You reduce it. Instead of reacting impulsively, you respond intentionally. This is the culmination of emotional mastery, not the absence of feeling, not the suppression of intensity, but the steady alignment of thought, breath, posture, and action, even when everything around you shakes. When the next storm arrives, and it will, people will look around again. And if you have practiced consistently, reflected honestly, and disciplined your reactions patiently, they will find the anchor. And that anchor will be you. You have just completed a journey that most people never consciously take. Not because it is complicated, but because it requires responsibility. Throughout this audiobook, we did not chase motivation. We did not chase quick emotional hacks. We focused on something deeper, mastery. We began by understanding your emotional triggers, recognizing that your reactions are often rooted in hidden beliefs, not present reality. Awareness became your first layer of strength. Then we built the discipline of the pause, learning that power lives in the space between stimulus and response. That small moment of restraint can protect your reputation, your relationships, and your peace. You learned how to rewrite your inner narrative, to challenge exaggerated thinking, to separate identity from temporary outcomes, and to replace distortion with clarity. We explored how calm under pressure is trained, not inherited. That exposure, posture, breathing, so in repetition transform anxiety into steadiness. You discovered the importance of guarding your energy, understanding that empathy does not require emotional absorption and that boundaries protect clarity. We reframed pain, not as punishment, but as information. Setbacks became instruction, rejection became refinement, discomfort became growth. You saw how emotional discipline strengthens relationships, how listening accurately, regulating tone, and choosing timing creates safety instead of escalation. And finally, you stepped into the identity of becoming the calm in the storm, the steady presence others rely on when chaos rises. This is not about being emotionless. It is about being unshaken. Now here is the truth. Knowledge alone changes nothing. Transformation begins when you practice. Over the next week, choose one principle and apply it deliberately. Notice your triggers without judgment, but insert one intentional pause before a difficult response. Rewrite one negative internal narrative. Train composure in a small moment of inconvenience. Set one clear boundary. Extract one lesson from a recent disappointment. Approach one conversation with regulated calm. Do not attempt perfection. Aim for consistency. Emotional mastery is built quietly. No applause, no announcement. Just small, disciplined choices repeated daily. And over time, something powerful happens. So you become harder to provoke, harder to destabilize, harder to overwhelm. Not because life became easier, but because you became stronger. Remember, you cannot control the storms that pass through your life. You cannot silence every critic. You cannot eliminate pressure, unpredictability, or conflict. But you can control who you become in the presence of all of it. If this message resonated with you, don't let it stay as passive inspiration. Because share this video with someone who needs steadiness right now. A friend under pressure, a colleague navigating stress, a family member struggling with emotional overwhelm. Sometimes the right message at the right time can quietly change the direction of someone's life. Thank you for investing your time here. Time is your most valuable resource, and the fact that you chose to spend it strengthening your mind speaks volumes about who you are becoming. If this journey helped you, stay connected. And there is always another level of growth waiting. Deeper discipline, sharper clarity, stronger self-mastery. Until the next video, continue practicing, continue refining, continue choosing calm over chaos. And remember, The storm may be loud, but your composure can be louder without ever raising its voice.